I wanted to cover a couple things on the early letter forms project, and one of the things that's really important is the fact that you guys use the right fonts. It states in the project guidelines that we are to use one of the fonts from the 5 historical classifications, and here in paragraph 5, it looks like it's Garamond, Baskerville, Bodoni, Century Expanded, or Helvetica. You're going to use the same typeface for each of the solutions. At first you can experiment with them, but make sure that you only use one of these fonts here. So how do we get to those fonts? Well, I recently put on the project guidelines area the Fonts Project 2 zip file. So if you right click on that and you save it to your desktop or wherever you put your material for Project 2, that's how you download it. If you just double click on it on a Mac, it'll automatically extract. I believe on a PC you may have to right click and tell it to extract here. Mac doesn't have that. And then I'll go ahead and dump the zip file. Now, to load the font, I have a video on how to do that in resources. I also have in the resources area, let me get to that. There we go. I have additional fonts. So here it says fonts for educational use only. That contains a lot of fonts. So if for future projects, if we're not using those 5 historical fonts, you can go in here. But it does discuss how you load a font on both Mac and PC. Now I have a thing called extensive suitcases, but you guys probably won't have that. So here's how you load the font on the Mac. You basically double click on the fonts folder. You decide which font you'd like to use. So let's say I would like to use Garamond. Now Garamond, these are professional grade fonts. They're open type. They work both on Mac and PC. But you can see that this particular typeface has, oh gosh, about 20 font files. So the typeface is Garamond. ITC stands for International Typeface Corporation, so this is the brand. And then each of these files is known as a font. So Garamond isn't really the font. The font is the file and the name of whether it's italic or bold or condensed or bold condensed and so on. So in order to really take advantage of all of these, I'm going to shift click through them. I'm going to go File. Now you can't just load them, you have to open them, and then the font book comes up on the Mac, so you would just hit Install Font on each one of these. So I'll go ahead and do that. This may take a couple seconds. Looks like it's installing quite a few of them, but there we go. It's installing them, and so on. Now on a PC, this is a different story. There we go. So Garamond is installed. So when I open InDesign, it should show up. On a PC, to load fonts, you would go down to the Start or the little Windows icon and go to Computer, or Control Panel rather. And here's how you do all that. Here in the Resources area, there's a fonts folder, and you would just drag it over there. Now keep a tab of what fonts you load, so in case your computer starts acting up, there could be a font conflict. And if there is, it might act like it's got a virus when it may really not. Okay, so let me get back to this week's materials. We're in week 5. And I am going to look in Project 2 letter forms. I am going to upload this video soon. It's not here right now, so I'll be putting that in. But I'm going to open InDesign, and I'm going to show that we actually have that font available. So here's InDesign. Let me look at the project guidelines again, because I can't remember what the size is. This is probably 10 by 10 or 8 by 8. I'm just not sure. So I need to read the project guidelines. And it's not always the easiest thing to find this, so that's why you have to read. And there we go, 10 by 10. So I'm going to open an InDesign document, create a new one, and I don't want facing pages. This is not a book. I'm going to type in 10 inches by 10 inches. Now this is already in another demo, but I want to just check to see if the font is actually in here. Let me do 3 columns, 10 inches by 10 inches, which equates to 60 pica by 60 pica. And I have a half inch margin, or 3 pica margin all the way around. Now, just to see if the font is loaded, I'm going to type the word in headline, and then I will increase it in size. And how I'm doing that is I selected the headline within the bigger box and I held down Shift and Command. On a PC it'd be Shift and Control. Shift Command greater than, which is the period on the keyboard, or lesser than to make it smaller, which is the comma on the keyboard. But it's Shift Command greater than or lesser than, or on a PC Shift Control greater than or lesser than. Now I want to see if this font, Garamond, ITC Garamond, has been loaded. Now these are in alphabetical order. So I'm going down to the G's. Now, since it's an ITC typeface, it may have the letters ITC before it, so that can be a little deceiving because you're looking just for Garamond, and so here it is. It has ITC before it, and here are all of the fonts to choose from within that typeface. So maybe for the headline, I'll use Garamond Bold Condense. So that did work. Now just keep in mind too that all typefaces we're using should be professional. They should be open type, so you should see an O next to them. If it has a TT, that's true type. Those really aren't professional grade. So make sure, even though I had a bunch of Garamonds in here, I want to make sure that I'm using a professional grade open type font, because industry really doesn't prefer to use these true type. They're just not professional. So I have a few open type Garamonds, but I loaded Adobe Garamond Pro. No, I'm sorry, ITC Garamond, and that's the one I'm using. Just make sure you don't get confused. I got 4 Garamonds by 4 different manufacturers here, so make sure you're always using the right one. You can always unload a few that you're not using if it's bothersome. But and how you do that, you just go to the fonts folder and take it out. Don't throw it in the trash though, because it'll delete it forever. So you can just put it someplace where it's not in the fonts folder. Okay, so that concludes the video on how to load fonts and check to see that they're actually available in InDesign.